What's going on, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Gilly, and those of you who've been here before are probably thinking,
oh my god, you can talk!
And yeah, I actually went and bought a microphone to make this very video. It's been 4 months since my last upload, and by the time you finish watching this video, you'll understand why this took so long. This thing almost broke me. I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen this image in one form or another. Some of you probably don't even know that it's from Chainsaw Man. I won't be going into any spoilers or giving any context to this image, since the anime is only in season 1, it hasn't gotten this far yet. But for me, this is easily one of the most iconic manga panels of all time. I learned about the infinity mirror diorama technique from watching all these talented artists on YouTube make beautiful art with them. To give a brief description of what an infinity mirror diorama is, essentially you need a regular mirror in the back, a two-way mirror in the front, and then a light source that will reflect whatever object you have between those mirrors infinitely. Luckily for me, there was already a very talented artist online who made the astronaut 3D model, so I don't have to do it from scratch. Shout out to XY Access for the free model, and the link will be in the description if you want to download it yourselves. Once I have the model the appropriate size and ready to print, it's time to start cutting up all that MDF board I bought. Now, I don't own any power tools, but my brother does, and he was kind enough to lend me his carpentry skills to get these boxes measured and cut. Although neither of us are particularly good at math, which is why I have a giant bag full of scrap pieces that we just didn't measure right. The box you guys are watching me make now is actually the second box, since I did one off camera first as a test. Let me go ahead and show you guys what that looked like and what went horribly wrong with it. This one actually came out way better than I was expecting, honestly. I got very far into it before I ran into any issues. But then there were issues. The first issue was the mirror didn't quite reach the corners, which left this ugly gap that was clearly visible. Now that was a relatively easy fix, which wasn't a big deal, but then this happened.
What the hell? Oh my god, no way.
So what happened here was the dust from the sanding and painting made its way inside the box from that top plastic piece that holds up the light. It's a bit tricky to explain it since I didn't show you guys how I made that box, so at this point I decided to just put that one down and start the second one where I can correct all the mistakes that I made. Now let me go ahead and admit that I've never used MDF before, nor have I made any models out of wood whatsoever. I tried my best not to underestimate it though, which is why I made one off camera first as a test, and it was coming out pretty well until it wasn't. Being the rookie craftsman that I am, my idea was to drill a bunch of holes through all these MDF boards and then use a thick wire to glue them all together, kinda like support beams for a house. I'm not even gonna lie, lining up the holes between these pieces was way more difficult than it probably should have been. There's gotta be a tool out there that makes this way easier to do, I just didn't know what it was, so I did it the hard way. All the people out there that have way more experience in this field than I do are shaking their fist at me right now for trying to do it this way. And I don't blame them. I went into this project knowing that there's probably going to be more efficient ways than how I chose to do this stuff. But again, this is the first time I've ever done this, and it felt right to me at the time, so that's why I did it. The reason I haven't glued in that left wall yet is because I want to get the back mirror in first. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and paint these edges black just in case they're going to show. The reason I want to put the mirror in before the wall is so that I can make sure that there's no gap between the mirror and the wall like there was in the first box. You see, I learn from my mistakes and I make sure I don't repeat them. So now that the core box is constructed, let's go ahead and start working on the inside of the box a little bit. The first thing I'll do is start measuring the box so I know exactly how big the inner foam piece needs to be. I've seen a bunch of diorama videos on YouTube, and I know that people love using this pink foam because it's so much easier to work with than regular foam. I'm using this to make that grassy platform that the astronaut's going to be sitting on top of. Once again, I know there's probably better tools for this than a kitchen knife, but whenever I tried to use my X-Acto knife, it didn't give me a clean cut, so I decided to use this and it worked pretty well. Once the foam piece is cut and I check to make sure it's a good fit, it's time to get it ready for the astronaut to sit on top. First things first, I gotta measure and draw lines straight through the middle to make sure that my astronaut will sit perfectly centered. I'm gonna trim his intestines down just a little bit to make it easier to fit in the box. Fortunately, it's easily fixed with just a little bit of glue. Once I got the astronaut centered and I traced the shape, all I had to do was take my X-Acto knife and start cutting around it to make a crevice for him to sit in. Once I traced around the entire shape with the blade, I just took my pliers and started cutting little pieces of it until I had the appropriate size hole that I wanted. So what I decided to do here was add an outer layer to the box to give it a bit more structure, make it a bit heftier, and just add a little bit of height to it. In hindsight, I don't really think it needed this. I think it made it a bit too bulky, which is why if I was to make this box again, I'd definitely do it a different way. Not that I would need to make another box, because I'm definitely going to get it right this time. Once I have all three of these pieces glued together, it's time to measure and cut the hole in the center where the light's going to sit in. The light source I chose to go with was this $10 light from Amazon. All I did was glue a little handle to it to make it easier to remove and put back. It's also USB rechargeable, which means I don't have to rig up any LEDs or have any wires to worry about. I decided now is a good time to go ahead and close those drain holes from the 3D print. The reason I put holes in the model is so that I can make it hollow inside and the resin will be able to drain out and it won't stay trapped inside the model. While that clay is hardening for about 3 hours, I'm going to go ahead and tape up the sides and the back mirror and get this box ready to be primed. I had my dad help me with sanding and priming this box since he's been sanding and priming cars for about 20 years, so it's pretty easy for him. I picked up this plastic sheet which I'm going to cut and glue to the bottom of the roof piece, which is going to hold the light in place and keep it from falling inside the box. I cut this using a cheap acrylic cutter, which is way quicker than when I used to use my X-Acto blade to do it. Once I had that plastic piece the same size as the roof piece, I went ahead and taped up the center where the light would shine through and painted the entire thing black. After that, all I had to do was glue that plastic piece to the bottom of the roof and then glue that roof piece onto the rest of the box. Once the box was all put together, I handed it back off to my dad so he can sand it and prime it once again. I also filled the crevice in the foam with epoxy clay so that I could squish the astronaut into it and create an indentation that would make it easier to glue down later. Now it's time to start working on that foam piece, and for that we're going to need some white paint and some Mod Podge mixed together, and then we're just going to glaze that on top of the entire foam piece. Once it's got about 2 or 3 coats and it's nice and hard, it's ready to move on to the next step. Applying static grass. Now I've never used this before, in fact I bought it for this project specifically, but I was super excited to use it. Once the grass is in the cup, all you gotta do is spread another layer of Mod Podge around the foam, then connect the cable to the foam to get an electric current going, and then just sprinkle it on top. It's a good thing I looked up how to use this thing beforehand, otherwise I definitely would have electrocuted myself. I didn't know that to get rid of the current, you had to do this. Once I made sure the whole top part was completely covered in grass, I went ahead and shook off the excess and let that dry. While the grass was drying, I went ahead and started sanding the areas that I had filled in on the model. This way I can get it nice and smooth and ready to be painted. First I primed the models with gray and then went back and painted them with a base coat of white. I'm painting this to resemble the manga panel as closely as possible, which means it's mostly going to be white, a little bit of gray for shadows, and then a bunch of black panel lining to make it look hand-drawn. The grass also had to be painted white since the entire scene is in black and white. Before I start painting the details on the astronaut itself, I went ahead and started spraying the area around the astronaut with black to make it look like the blood from the manga panel. Now comes the part that I was equally as excited and nervous about. I've seen a bunch of artists do these 2D style paint jobs on their figures where they make it look like it comes straight out of an anime, although I've never really seen it with a manga panel, so I was excited to try something that not only have I never done before, but I've never seen anybody else do before either. Now, it being a manga panel means that all I had to worry about was white, gray, and black, so it was definitely a lot simpler than a lot of these 2D paint jobs that I've seen. Most of this process I didn't end up filming because, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to paint these fine black lines while there's a camera in between me and the model. Also, a lot of the footage that I did get was unusable because it was out of focus. Getting this astronaut fully painted was easily the most tedious and time-consuming part of the entire project, but it does look really good once it's done. So this is where I ran into my first issue with this box. I was removing the tape from the back mirror after painting the box black, and I noticed that some of the residue from the paint had managed to get onto the mirror and get it super dirty. I tried my best not to panic and just took a little bit of alcohol with some Q-tips and tried to clean it off. It was somewhat successful, but I was never really able to get all the residue off, which really bummed out the inner perfectionist in me, but I tried my best to just suppress that feeling and keep moving forward. Now it was time to start getting everything glued down and ready for the final stages. I cut the front two-way mirror to be the exact same size as the front of the box, that way I can just glue it down and then put another wooden piece on top of that as a frame. Once I had the frame built and primed, I painted it black and glued it to the front of the box. The only two things left to do now were to paint the box black and then paint and glue on this Chainsaw Man logo to the front of the box. I'll leave the link to the model of this logo in the description as well. Now at this point I've finished the second box, but that issue with the back mirror just didn't sit right with me. This is what it ended up looking like. Now, as you can see, it's still relatively well done. It's just there's a couple of issues with it, especially that back mirror that I couldn't let it go. I decided to make one more box where I would correct all my previous mistakes and finally make it right. As you probably already noticed, I decided that this box should be a little bit smaller than the other ones. I wanted it to be more sleek, easier to pick up with one hand, and just overall more compact. I've been on quite a journey with this diorama so far. At this point, it's been about 3 months since I started this project, and I won't even lie to you, I'm exhausted with this thing. But no matter how tired I get or how much I want to put it down and forget about it, I'm going to get this thing done because I believe in this project. I had what I thought was a pretty cool idea, so I wanted to bring it to life as best as I could. Being the insecure artist that I am, I didn't feel like my first 2 attempts really captured the vision that I had for the project. I feel like every artist at some point has that feeling where if they just do it one more time, they'll make it way better than the last time. I've been guilty of this on many occasions. As you can probably tell, I am very stubborn when it comes to this kind of stuff. If I'm confident enough in the idea that I'm trying to convey, I will do it over and over again until I achieve the goal that I have for myself. Is that the wisest decision? Absolutely not. I've spent at least $250 on this project so far between the MDF wood, the mirrors, the paint, the glue, all of it, just extremely expensive stuff overall. But in the end, it'll finally be worth it when I can look at my project with pride and say, Did I f it up again? Oh my god, I f***ed it up again! I don't think I can properly express the feelings that I'm going through in my head right now, which is why I decided to enlist the help of a thesaurus to get my point across. I am flabbergasted, befuddled, perplexed, mystified. And the worst part is, it's the same thing that happened to box number 1. I had already corrected the error in box number 2 and then forgot about it for box number 3. It was the same issue that I ran into with the plastic piece on the top not being sealed all the way and allowing the debris and dust to get in. You see, I learn from my mistakes and I make sure I don't repeat them. At this point, my sanity was hanging on for dear life. At some point, I have to come to terms with the fact that it's just never gonna be perfect. As cool as the idea was, maybe I'm just not experienced enough to get it done right. Now I did make an attempt to try and fix this box. I figured if I try to break the plastic piece on the top, clean up the inside a bit, and then cut and glued another plastic piece up from the bottom, that maybe I could make it look at least better than it did before. It feels pretty demoralizing to be working on a project for so long and have so much faith in it, only for it to keep getting ruined right at the finish line over and over again. I was so excited to do this project when I had the idea, and I spent as much money as I have and as much time as I have in this project because I thought that not only would I love to have this, but maybe other people would like to have this as well. I was hoping that I'd be able to make one for myself and then maybe one or two more just to make my money back and maybe make a little bit of profit off of the amount of time and money I've spent on this, but clearly the universe had some other intentions. I did manage to clean up the back mirror quite a bit, and it does look a lot better than it used to, but unfortunately it's a very tight space to be able to work with, and I wasn't able to make the new plastic piece look as good as the old one. I guess let's take a look at the two boxes that we created in this video and see what we ended up with as the final result for both. I'm still not exactly satisfied with the results that I've gotten so far, even if the second box in hindsight probably isn't as bad as I made it out to seem before. Is it perfect? Not by any means, but it's definitely the closest of the three that I've gotten so far. And even though I messed it up 3 times in a row, I hope you guys at least enjoyed watching me do it. This project took quite a toll on me mentally and financially. I'll be selling the second box just to try to make some of the money back that I spent on this project so far. And I've also created a 3D model version of this box so that when I can afford a bigger printer, I can print and make more of these boxes. So if any of you Chainsaw Man fans or art connoisseurs out there want to own one of these and you want to help me speed that process along, you can go ahead and make an order on my Etsy page and I'll be able to start cranking these out for you guys. I also just created a Patreon for anyone out there who would like to support what I do but doesn't quite have the money to dish out for a custom collectible. I absolutely love making and sharing art, and I will be doing it for as long as I possibly can, but these things do get quite expensive and I am but a poor, humble artist. Any and all help is always appreciated, and it'll always go to tools and equipment that's gonna bring you guys better content on this channel. Even something as simple as liking the video and leaving a comment does wonders for a budding creator like myself. With that being said, what do you guys think? Did I royally f it up? Or maybe is it not as bad as I'm making it seem? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below. I want to thank you all for watching the decline in my sanity over the last 4 months, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I will be making a part 2 to this video once I get that new printer up and running and I'm able to print those boxes so you can see what it's really supposed to look like when it's done proper. But until then, there is more Chainsaw Man content on the horizon. I've still got more of the main cast members coming your way. So go ahead and subscribe so you can stay tuned for those. Once again, thank you all for watching, and remember, you only fail when you give up.